Really happy to be here, especially the day back from Thanksgiving. Did everybody have a good Thanksgiving? Excellent, okay. So I actually, as you can see here from my titles, I'm currently head of national accounts at Xero. I actually was a co-founder of a firm, ran a firm up in New York for 18 years. Took the firm through the evolution of what we're starting to see from a cloud adoption and cloud technology perspective. So I got a really good front-end view of what it can do to not only myself and my partner, but also what it did to our staff. This is kind of the baseline of what we're going to talk about today. So I'm not going to take you guys through a whole bunch of slides because I don't feel like slides can always capture what really happens to a person. So I'm going to share some of my own stories of what we went through, right? So we started looking at cloud adoption back in 2009, which seems kind of crazy, right? The cloud back in 2009 was something that, you know, we looked up in the sky and saw, or maybe we started seeing a little bit of an impact from email accounts and other cloud products that we started to see. So back in 2009, my partner and I were on our way back from a conference in Kansas City. We were sitting on the plane. And I have no idea what actually sparked this, but we took out a yellow sheet of legal pad and we said, you know what, let's figure out how many different ways do we actually do payroll for our clients. We had maybe 4,000 clients at that time. And when we got down to it, we were doing about 200, 250 live payroll clients that we were seeing every single week or at least quarterly. We got down to that end of that piece of paper. There was 12 different ways we were handling payroll. We said, this doesn't work anymore. We can't do this. We can't hire people and try and train them and expect them to have this good experience as we start adopting different types of technology. Plus, we also at that time wanted to kind of build on our service offerings, and because we had a couple of different offices, we had some geographical limitations with that, but if we really wanted to produce a better type of experience for our clients, we're going to have to move outside of that one little physical space, which was the proximity to the office for our clients. So we started thinking about how we actually go about doing this. The only way to do this was really to start to adapt some sort of cloud technology, right? So this way we didn't have to have clients that were within driving distance. That was the first kind of, what I like to say, the little toe step into cloud technology or what it could do for us. The coolest part about that experience was I came back and I said, all right, team, here's what we're going to do. They all thought I was crazy. All right, but we're still going to do it. Let's go figure this out. I gave them the opportunity to go do it, and they just went out and implemented it, which was great because for once, I didn't have to get involved with the technology. Fast forward a few more years, and I was driving to work, and I felt like I didn't want to go to work anymore. It's not that I didn't enjoy the people that I was with. It's not that I didn't enjoy, you know, what I was doing and the clients, although sometimes clients, we all know, can get in the way of the fun stuff. But in reality, I just wasn't getting the excitement out of going in, and it was probably close to tax season, if not during tax season, when I got this feeling. But I didn't have that excitement of why I got into this business and why I wanted to run to work every single day. Prior to that, I was pretty happy about things. We were kind of moving along with status quo. It had been, you know, a few years, maybe 10 years at that point. And I was still pretty happy about meeting new clients and interacting with new people and being kind of in that environment. But then one day, I got up and I was like, you know, this is just not as much fun. So around that time, we started actually thinking about how we could change our service offerings and how we were going to market with our clients, right? We had been pretty heavily tax focused with some accounting to kind of keep out the rest of the year, right? Well, I started talking to clients during that tax season, and what I started noticing was the clients wanted more from us throughout the course of the year, right? They love us when they come to see us, which is why our people were really loving what they were doing as well. They loved dealing with the clients, probably even more so than myself and my partner did. So as we were kind of going through this, I started asking them the question, how often would you like to see us? What kind of conversations would you want to have with us? I then started thinking about, this really good dovetail off the last session, I started thinking about how my employees were actually enjoying what they were doing. Were they actually enjoying this? Were we asking them the question do you like coming to work in the morning? Or were they having the same feeling that I was having when I woke up to go to work? Well, we had a lot of really good employees, and they did seem to want to come to work, but I wasn't really sure if that was because they were happy getting a paycheck or they really loved what they were doing. So we had to start surveying for it. But the challenge is that if you go and write out a survey, how truthful and honest is that really going to be? And how are you looking at the metrics of your firm to say that, okay, if I make a little change here and how my employees are working with technology, how is that going to impact them, right? So we started using some technology, obviously, to go figure that part out as well. So we started surveying, and we used a couple of different apps for that, and really kind of got down to what is the firm's, right? So what is our internal employee net promoter score? How quickly would somebody turn around and say, yes, you should go work with them? And then how does that impact the decisions that we're making on what we're putting in front of folks and what tools they should be utilizing, right? So we started making some shifts. We started adopting a lot more advisory work, right? So we started creating this evolution of working with our clients in a different way, which they were asking for, which was really cool. But we used the technology in order to be able to do that. And as we started doing that, the score started changing, right? And as you start looking at those numbers and saying, hey, why are we starting to see these results? You start asking everybody. And as you start having that conversation, you see people drifting into different business units that they were primarily more comfortable in or they felt better about, right? But what we were trying to do was we're trying to create not just work-life balance, but we're trying to create a more efficient process so they could get back to what it was that at the core they wanted to do, which was making them happy, right? I had that same feeling. Now, after about a year or so, maybe a year and a half, of kind of going through this process and trying to learn and educate the teams and picking apps and creating process and all that other good stuff, I looked back on what I was doing, and I was a new person at that point. I really did enjoy getting up and going to work. Now, obviously, I like to move around in what I do, but at that point, from an accounting perspective, I was at the point where I was really the most engaged with what I was doing for work every single day. So the difference was, once I got past that evolution, you can stop me from coming from work, right? And I would work well beyond normal hours, which meant I actually was creating the opposite problem for myself, which was unbalancing my non-work life. That's a whole another story, shared for another time. But what was also happening, which was interesting, was when I was watching how our employees were actually starting to engage with the work that we were doing, they were getting more excited. So where people would leave the office, shut off their computers, turn off their phones for the day, all of a sudden you start seeing people communicating more, right? They start answering stuff at all sorts of crazy hours, which we tried to get them not to do, because that also builds some negative behavior on the client side. But it was really interesting to see that it wasn't just us as partners that we thought had a true financial benefit to this, but we really started seeing that as we were actually starting to adopt these different attitudes towards how we actually addressed our clients and therefore also addressed our staff, they were super engaged. They didn't want to stop working. They wanted to help clients. They wanted to jump on things quicker. The net result of that means, of course, you take a look at the value they're actually producing for the client, and that's kind of the easy one, right? Like that one we're starting to work through, and we're trying to figure out, we're starting to understand as an industry where the value perception has shifted. The difference, though, is when you look at it from an employee's perspective, right? There's a bunch of numbers that are out there as to what kind of cost to a practice a bad hire is. Well, that can be true for the existing hires that you have as you go through technology adoption and shifts in how you actually go and service your clients. So you really want to be looking at how you're supporting them. I made a bunch of really big mistakes as I was doing this, because that's the only way that I was willing to learn. I wasn't here listening to people talk about it. And what I found was that for different folks, there's different ways to really engage in this. And you have to talk to your people. It's great to have that understanding of where they are emotionally in this, in the change management cycle. But if you don't talk to them about it and you don't adapt process and kind of adapt to how they're going to be able to adapt technology, they're not going to be ready for it. And we make a lot of assumptions on who is willing to adopt and not willing to adopt technology. And I'll tell you, I was wrong every single time when I made those assumptions. Every single time. The folks that I expected to adopt technology quicker sometimes push back harder. And the folks that I didn't expect to adopt technology quicker were the biggest champions we had. So you never know where it's going to come from. But what you really need to think about when you're starting to look at not just technology, but also process and actual service lines and how you execute and what kind of services you're offering to your clients, you have to think about your people and how they're going to adopt. So we ended up with a team at the end. I just recently sold the firm a few months ago, but we ended up with a team of about 60 or so. And we had started with a team of maybe 4 or 5, right? So we grew, and I will honestly say that as we grew, did I always have that front of mind? No, I didn't. Should I have had it front of mind? Yes, probably, at least number 2, right? Our people are what drove us to be successful in that practice. That's what helped us actually be able to evolve. And if we don't think about how the impact of the technology is with them and what those other iterations could be as far as other service lines, we're not going to be able to be successful. So I always would say, when somebody would say, oh, it's great, you built up this practice, it's wonderful, it's good to hear, I'd always say, it's not about us. It's about the people that work for us and how they're adopting to what we're actually putting into their hands, right? So thinking about ENPS, and that term is relatively new when we start turning it inside on ourselves. We know that the accounting industry has a pretty high level of actual employment, which is great, but are we asking ourselves the question, how happy are people with us? Are they happy because they have a role and a job? Or are they happy because they feel like they're truly making an impact to the world around them? Right? And then how can we make that better? One of the things that we learned when we adopted cloud technology was that we really understood that we were creating efficiency. The efficiency was what was actually driving the ability to have different conversations. It wasn't the other way around. Right? So efficiency was the piece that allowed us to go do the good work. We all want to do the good work. We all know about that. But if we can't find the time to do it, we're never going to make that change. We're never going to be able to adopt that. We found it by leveraging technology to do it in part. We also found it by finding good people that like doing the same kind of work we did. All right. Excellent. Thank you, everybody.